During Thanksgiving, my grandma giggled and said, "Your mom was the pretty one. You were just there." I laughed, took a sip of wine, and said, "That's weird because Grandpa's letters seem to say otherwise." Then I placed the box on the table. I swear the whole room froze the second my grandma said it. It was Thanksgiving in Dayton, Ohio, and everyone was packed around the too small dining table like we always were, pretending we still liked each other for the sake of the holiday. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes were already crusting over, and the only thing keeping me sane was the cheap Merlot I'd been downing like water. Grandma looked right at me when she said it. "Your mom was the pretty one. You were just there." She giggled, like it was some harmless joke. Like it wasn't the kind of thing that burrows under your skin and lives there for years. And the worst part, everyone else at the table did that awkward half-smile people do when they know something messed up just happened, but they don't want to get involved. I laughed. I actually laughed. It was sharp and too loud, and it tasted like metal in the back of my throat. I took a slow sip of wine, staring straight at her, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. "That's weird," I said, keeping my voice calm, "because Grandpa's letters seem to say otherwise." That's when I placed the box on the table, a plain wooden box, dark cherry wood, a little warped on one side, tied shut with a fraying piece of twine. I'd brought it from my apartment and kept it hidden under my jacket. I'd been planning to open it later that night, alone, after I visited my mom's grave like I do every Thanksgiving. But Grandma's comment hit something in me, a raw nerve I usually work hard to bury. The room shifted immediately. Chairs creaked. Forks scraped against plates. My cousin Lynn actually put down her phone for the first time all night. Grandma's smile faded the second she saw the box. She went pale like she already knew what was inside. What is that?" she asked. "Letters," I said. "Old ones from Grandpa. Found them when we were cleaning out Mom's storage unit." That wasn't exactly true. I didn't find them. They were left for me, intentionally, hidden in a place only I would think to look. I'd spent the past week reading them, over and over, trying to make sense of what I'd been told my whole life versus what he'd written. Raw, unfiltered words from a man I barely remembered, but apparently had a lot to say. "What letters?" my Aunt Carla asked. "Dad never wrote letters." "Oh," I said, "he did, and there's something." Grandma's hands trembled. She reached for her water glass, missed, and knocked it over. No one moved to help her. I pulled the box closer and started undoing the twine. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my teeth. I didn't even plan to expose anything at the table, not at first, but there was something satisfying, almost electric, about watching Grandma's face crumble. "Maybe we should do this later," my Uncle Bill muttered. "No," I said, meeting Grandma's eyes. "We're doing it now." The twine fell away. I lifted the lid, and right on top, exactly where I left it, was the first letter, the one that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The one that explained why Grandma never liked me, why she couldn't even look at me most of the time, why she'd spent years making sure I felt small. I picked up the letter, unfolded it carefully, and cleared my throat. "Here's the part I think you'll all find interesting." And just as I started reading the first sentence out loud, Grandma blurted out, "Stop! Don't you dare!" Everyone gasped. I kept reading anyway. People always assume family tension comes from one big moment, like a blow-up fight or some dramatic betrayal you can point to on a calendar. But with my grandma, it was never one thing. It was years of tiny, cutting comments that piled up until they felt like part of the air in the house. Growing up in Dayton, I spent more time at my grandparents' place than my actual home. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital, and my dad wasn't around. He left before I was even old enough to say his name. So Grandma and Grandpa became my daily life. Or, more accurately, Grandma did. Grandpa was always in his workshop or reading in his study, quiet but steady, like a background hum you don't notice until it's gone. Grandma wasn't cruel in the obvious way. She didn't scream. She didn't hit. She just chipped away at me, constantly. Comments about my weight, my hair, my clothes, my schoolwork, my laugh, my friends, any tiny thing she could twist into a flaw. "You're too sensitive. You're getting chubby again. Your mom was so beautiful at your age. Maybe try harder next time." All said with this sweet, sugar-dipped smile that made everyone else think she was just a harmless old lady who meant well. Meanwhile, my mom barely noticed. She'd just say something like, "That's how she is, honey," or "Don't take it seriously," even though I could tell it bothered her. She just didn't have the energy to deal with it. She was exhausted, buried by work, bills, and the constant weight of doing everything alone. The weird thing is, Grandpa was the opposite. He never complimented me outright, but he never put me down either. He'd help me with homework. He'd slip me little notes of encouragement when I was scared about a test. He'd bring me small things he carved: birds, little boxes, a tiny rocking chair made for my dolls. Somehow he knew when I needed a quiet reminder that I wasn't invisible. I always felt like there was some kind of silent tension between him and Grandma, something old and sour that settled between them like dust. Whenever he walked into a room, she'd go stiff. Whenever she made one of her comments toward me, he'd close his eyes like it physically hurt him. But he never confronted her, not in front of me at least. He just let it happen. When he died when I was 19, it felt like someone had knocked the one stable leg off my life. My mom cried quietly for weeks. Grandma didn't cry at all, not once. At the funeral, she stood like a statue, face blank, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. That was the first time I ever wondered if she'd hated him too. When Mom passed 3 years ago, she left behind 2 storage units. I was the one who cleaned them out because the rest of the family suddenly had scheduling conflicts. I found boxes of medical paperwork, old Christmas ornaments, photos, receipts, nothing meaningful at first. But at the very back of the second unit, behind a stack of broken lamps and an old mattress, I found a wooden trunk with a folded piece of paper taped to the inside of the lid. My name was written on it. Inside the trunk were letters, dozens of them bundled with twine, all from Grandpa, all addressed to my mom, some opened, some not, some dated even when he was alive and living under the same roof. I didn't understand that part at first. Why would he write letters instead of just talking to her? Why were so many unopened? Why did my mom hide them instead of telling me? It wasn't until I read the second bundle, the ones he wrote but never sent, that everything inside me shifted. And it wasn't until one specific letter, the one on top of the box at Thanksgiving, that I finally understood why Grandma always looked at me like she couldn't stand the sight of me. I didn't plan to spiral into those letters the way I did. At first, I just skimmed them, half curious, half exhausted from packing up everything my mom left behind. But the more I read, the more I felt something tightening in my chest, like I'd walked into a room I wasn't supposed to see. A lot of the early letters were simple. Updates, thoughts, memories, little stories about me when I was a baby. Things Grandpa noticed but never said aloud. Then the tone started shifting. There were lines about arguments with Grandma, about mistakes that couldn't be undone, about promises he wanted to keep but wasn't sure he could, about secrets my mom deserved to know once she was ready. And then there were the unsent ones, letters he clearly wrote in private, maybe never intending anyone to see. Those were darker, more emotional, more personal. They weren't written like a father talking to his daughter. They were written like a man burying decades' worth of guilt. One night, reading by the dim light in my apartment, I hit a letter where he mentioned me directly. She doesn't see what I see. She never has. She only sees what she wishes were true, not what is. At first I thought he was talking about my mom, but the next line made the hair on my arms stand up. I worry about how she looks at the child, like she wants to find proof that isn't there. I read that letter 3 times. I had no clue what it meant, but something about the wording chilled me. Proof of what? Why would Grandma need proof? And of what exactly? There were more letters like that, skirting around the edges of something I couldn't see yet. Something big, something dangerous in the way he avoided naming it. By the time I finished them all, I was left with this huge, suffocating feeling that something in our family story was warped, bent, lied about. But it wasn't until I opened the envelope tucked between 2 bundles, an envelope with my name handwritten on the front, that I felt my whole world tilt. It wasn't a long letter, maybe half a page. Grandpa's handwriting was shaky, maybe the last thing he ever wrote. Only one line hit me hard enough to make my stomach flip. If she ever turns that cruelty on you again, tell her I kept the truth. That truth, whatever it was, felt like a ticking bomb. For weeks after that, I kept the letters in my closet. I told no one. I didn't know what to do or who to ask. My mom was gone. Grandpa was gone. And Grandma, well, she'd made it pretty damn clear my whole life what she thought of me. The weird thing was, after reading those letters, I started noticing more. The way my family acted around Grandma. The way people just followed her lead. The way every negative thing about me somehow came from her mouth originally, then spread through aunts, uncles, cousins like it was gospel. Their words, their tone, their judgment, it was all just her, echoing through everyone else. She had always been the root, and now I had something she clearly didn't want anyone to see. Thanksgiving was the first time we'd all been together since Mom died. We hadn't been in the same room since the funeral, and the tension was already bad before I walked in. I brought the letters with me originally because I planned to give one of the bundles, Mom's bundle, to Carla, who had been my mom's closest sibling. I thought she deserved it. But the moment Grandma made that comment about me, about how I was just there, something inside me snapped into place. Like all the quiet humiliation she fed me for 25 years finally tipped over. And the way she reacted when she saw the box, the fear in her eyes, that's when I realized something I had never dared to believe. Whatever Grandpa wrote, whatever he kept secret, Grandma knew exactly what it was. And she was terrified of me finding out. Grandma's voice cracked the second I started reading the first line of the letter at the table. It wasn't even anything explosive yet, just my grandpa's handwriting, describing a memory of me as a toddler, running through their backyard with a bubble wand. But she reacted like I'd pulled a knife. I said stop. Her voice shook, high and sharp, nothing like the controlled, sugary tone she always used. Everyone froze. Nobody had ever heard her yell like that, not once. Even my Aunt Carla looked stunned, fork halfway to her mouth. I lowered the letter but didn't put it away. Why? I asked. It's just a letter. But Grandma wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at the box. At the entire pile of letters sitting inside it. Her lips trembled. Those were never meant for anyone, she whispered. Carla frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? Dad wrote letters. Grandma didn't answer. She kept staring at the box like it was radioactive. I pulled out the second page, the one that mattered. The one I had read 3 nights in a row, trying to convince myself I hadn't misunderstood it. This time, I read the first real line out loud. You were right when you told me she'd never let it go, but the child deserves to live without that shadow. She deserves the truth someday. The room went silent. My Uncle Bill blinked. Shadow. What shadow? Grandma squeezed her eyes shut like she could erase the whole moment. Don't do this, she said. Please. The word please coming from her mouth felt wrong, wrong enough that everyone stiffened. I kept going. I told her the truth when your daughter was born. I thought she'd accept it eventually. I was wrong. She's been looking for excuses ever since. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I knew what came next. I'd memorized it by accident. It doesn't matter how she tries to spin it. The truth is simple. The child is mine. The child, me. Everyone inhaled sharply, even people who didn't know what they were reacting to yet. I folded the letter slowly. Then I looked at Grandma. Is that why you've hated me my whole life? I asked. Because Grandpa wasn't just my grandfather. Carla's eyes went wide. Mom, Grandma's face went slack, all the color drained from it. She opened her mouth once, twice, but no sound came out. Bill shoved his chair back. What the hell is she talking about? I dropped the final line of the letter like a grenade. You can pretend all you want, but biology doesn't lie. And I'll take the blame for everything if she ever finds out. Carla turned on Grandma, voice trembling. Mom, she's saying Dad was her father, and you knew. Grandma snapped back to life suddenly, desperately. She's lying, she hissed. Those letters are fake. Then explain why you're shaking, I said. She slammed her palm on the table. The dishes rattled. Because you weren't supposed to ever see them. Everyone froze. And then in the most brittle, venom-filled voice I'd ever heard from her, she spat. He promised he'd destroy those letters. He swore no one would ever know what he did. And your mother swore she'd keep her mouth shut after what happened. The table rippled with shock. What happened? Carla demanded. Grandma glared at me like I was something rotten she'd found in the fridge. He ruined this family, she whispered. And she pointed at me, was the final insult. I felt the words like a physical blow. That's enough, Bill said, pushing up. Mom, you owe us an explanation. No, Grandma said. You don't understand. None of you do. If you knew what he did, you… She caught herself, bit her lip, swallowed the rest. And that was the moment I knew she wasn't protecting Grandpa. She was protecting herself. And whatever she'd done, whatever truth she was burying was worse than anything I'd imagined. The room didn't recover after that. Nobody reached for their plates. Nobody took another bite. It felt like the entire dining room was sucked into a vacuum, and Grandma was the only one still trying to pretend she could control the air. She pushed her chair back, hands shaking, and tried to stand. You're all blowing this out of proportion, she said. Your grandfather was confused at the end. He didn't know what he was writing. He was well. But Bill grabbed her arm, not hard, just enough to stop her. Sit, he said. It was the first time in my life I'd heard him talk to her like that. She sat. Carla turned to me. What exactly do those letters say? I didn't answer right away. I was staring at Grandma, staring at the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. Staring at the way she kept glancing toward the box like she was calculating whether she could snatch it and run. Something in me clicked then. A cold, clean awareness. This woman had controlled the narrative my entire life. She made me the punchline, the leftover, the mistake. She did it with a smile and a hand on my shoulder, whispering poison in pretty, quiet sentences. And she thought she could keep doing it. She thought I would fold like my mom did. She thought I would protect her reputation the way everyone else did. For the first time ever, I didn't feel afraid of her. I felt furious and focused. I pulled the rest of the letters from the box, thick stacks of folded paper, rubber banded together. Everyone stared as I set them on the table like evidence in a trial. I've read every single one, I said, front to back, and they're not just about me. They're about Mom. They're about what happened before I was born. They're about what Grandma did after she found out. Grandma's breath hitched. Carla shook her head slowly. Mom, what didn't you tell us? Silence. Then Grandma whispered, You don't know what he was capable of. Capable of? Grandpa. The gentle man who carved wooden birds and read me stories. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just hiding a secret. She was rewriting history. And that meant the truth. Whatever it was a threat to her. I leaned forward. You know what's funny? For years, I thought you treated me like trash because you just didn't like me. But it's worse than that, isn't it? You hated me because I was proof, her eyes flashed. Proof of his betrayal. Or proof of yours, I said. Her entire face hardened. That was it. Confirmation. She wasn't shocked because the truth was ugly. She was shocked because the truth would expose her. My mind raced. Not chaotically, cleanly. Clearly. I saw the path in front of me, and for once I wasn't the one cornered. I was holding the ammunition. And she was terrified of what I might do with it. I quietly gathered the letters back into the box, tied the twine, and stood up. Where are you going? Carla asked. I need time to think, I said. And Grandma needs time to decide how honest she wants to be. Grandma opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to her. You're going to tell the truth, I said calmly. All of it, and you're going to do it soon. Because if you don't, I will. Her jaw locked. Those letters don't prove anything. They don't have to, I said. Not once I finish what I'm planning. The table stiffened with tension. What are you planning? Bill asked. I picked up my coat, slipped the box under my arm, and walked toward the door. Something Grandma should have thought about before dedicating 25 years to destroying me. I looked back at her one last time. And trust me, I'm done letting you win. I didn't go home that night. I drove around Dayton for almost an hour, box in the passenger seat, replaying every second of that dinner in my head. The night felt heavy, cold, too still. By the time I finally parked outside my apartment, my hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from something sharper, something like purpose. But the twist didn't hit me until the next morning. It started with a phone call. Actually, 6 missed calls, all from Carla. I assumed she wanted to talk about Grandma, or the letters, or the way our entire family practically detonated at Thanksgiving. But when I finally called back, her voice came through in a whisper, shaky, thin, nothing like her usual self. I need you to come over, she said. Now, I almost said no. I was still exhausted, still angry, but something in her tone, this strange, trembling urgency, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. When I got to her house, she didn't even say hello. She just opened the door, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me inside. "Carla, what's going on?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to her dining table, and on it, neat, organized, deliberate, was a stack of photographs. Old, faded. Curled edges. My stomach flipped the second I saw Grandma in the first one. Younger, maybe in her 40s, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, lean, sharply dressed, and his hand was resting a little too comfortably on Grandma's lower back. "What is this?" I asked. Carla swallowed hard. "I found them last night, in Mom's old sewing cabinet, hidden under the false bottom." I picked up the next photo, then the next. Grandma and the same man meeting in parking lots. At restaurants, in his car, holding hands, kissing. Some of the pictures were clearly taken in secret, blurry, off-center, like someone was hiding behind a corner or inside a car while taking them. "Who took these?" I asked quietly. Carla's eyes filled with tears. "Dad," I froze. She handed me something else, a folded sheet of paper, same handwriting as the letters. "Grandpa." I already felt sick before I even opened it. The note was short, only a few lines. "I know what she's doing. I've confronted her twice. She denies everything, even with the photos in my hands. I'm trying to protect the girls. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying not to destroy this family. But I can't keep pretending. Not when I know the truth. I don't think the baby is mine." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at them so long the letters blurred. Carla sat down heavily. "I think Mom kept these because she didn't want anyone to know. I don't think she ever told Dad what she found." "What do you mean?" She pushed another photo toward me. This one made my entire body go cold. Grandma hugging the same man in a motel room, and a date scribbled on the back. A date 2 months before I was conceived. I swallowed, mouth dry. "So it wasn't just resentment," I whispered. "It was guilt," Carla nodded. "And fear, the letters you have, they're from Dad trying to figure out the truth. These," she gestured at the photos, "are the truth." I couldn't breathe for a second. All this time I thought Grandma hated me because I reminded her of Grandpa. But the twist was worse, so much worse. Grandma hated me because she wasn't sure if I was his, and because there was a very real chance I was, but that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the envelope Carla handed me next, the one she found taped under a drawer. My name was written on it, and inside wasn't a letter. It was a DNA test, unsigned, unprocessed, unsent. With the swab still inside the sterile wrapper. Grandpa had planned to test me, and Grandma had stopped him. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat on my couch with the DNA test kit in my hand, the wrapper still sealed, the swab untouched. I kept turning it over, staring at the date printed on the packaging. It was old, older than I expected. Grandpa must have bought it during one of the years things were tense in their house, which, according to the letters, meant almost all of them. By the next morning, something in me felt colder, harder, like the shock had burned away, leaving only clarity. I needed answers, and there was only one person who had them: Grandma. When I showed up at her house, she was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her robe pulled tight around her shoulders. She looked smaller than she did at Thanksgiving. Older. But the second she saw the test kit in my hand, her eyes snapped into the same sharp, hateful glare she'd used on me since I was old enough to tie my shoes. "No," she said immediately. "We're not doing this." I shut the door behind me. "We're doing it." She shook her head, voice rising. "I don't owe you anything. I don't have to explain myself to— You do," I said quietly, "because you've been lying for 25 years. She went still. I placed the test kit between us on the table. Then I pulled the photographs from my bag, one by one. Slowly, the man, the motel, the touch on the lower back, the dates, her face drained of color. "You went through my things," she whispered. "They weren't yours," I said. "Mom kept them, and Grandpa took the pictures, you know he did." Her eyes flicked away, darting like she was searching for an escape, but there wasn't one. "Just tell me," I said. "Why did you treat me like this? Why did you hate me so much?" Her jaw clenched, and then like a dam cracking she burst. Because you weren't supposed to exist. The words slapped the air. Hard, ugly, final, my throat tightened. Explain. She closed her eyes, breathing shallow, like the truth itself was suffocating her. You don't understand what your mother did. She ruined everything. She took everything from me. Your grandfather, your perfect, gentle, sainted grandfather, he wasn't some victim. He was weak. Weak every single time she needed anything. He always put her first, always. My blood ran cold. You mean because she asked him for help? Grandma's lips curled. Because she stole him from me? That stunned me. What are you talking about? Her eyes opened, wild and furious. He loved her more than me. Do you understand? His own daughter. He cared more about her feelings, her struggles, her future, more than his own wife. More than the woman who kept this family together while he spent years looking at her like she was some disappointment. The words were starting to twist into something worse. Something bitter and warped. And when she got pregnant, she continued, he chose to believe it was his, even when he knew it was, even when I told him I knew the truth. My voice cracked. You didn't know. That's why you tried to stop him from getting the DNA test. She leaned forward, eyes burning. No, I stopped him because if that test proved you weren't his, he wouldn't have stayed. He wouldn't have forgiven me. And if it proved you were his, she paused, breathing ragged, then he would have loved you more than any of us, just like he loved her. The room tilted. My stomach dropped. You hated me, I whispered, because you were jealous. Of a baby? Of what you represent? She spat, slamming her fist on the table. Every time he looked at you, he softened. Every time you walked into the room, he lit up like she did when she was little. I saw it. And I knew you would replace me just like she did. I felt sick, actually sick. And the affair, I asked, was that punishment? Her voice lowered to a cold, chilling monotone. It was balance. I stared at her, horrified. She wasn't protecting a secret. She wasn't protecting the family. She wasn't scared of the truth. She was scared that the truth would prove she was the villain in her own story. And she was. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just sat there, staring at her across the table. The woman who raised me, belittled me, shaped the way I saw myself, and then admitted she did it on purpose. Not because of who I was, but because of what she feared I might take from her. A baby, a toddler, a teenager who just wanted someone to love her without conditions. That was what she was threatened by. Finally, I stood up. She tensed, like she expected me to scream or break something or throw the DNA test in her face. But I was done wasting emotion on her. You know, I said quietly, for years I wondered what I did to make you treat me the way you did. Now I know it was never about me, it was always about you. Her mouth tightened. You don't understand. No, I said. I understand perfectly. You punished a child because you were jealous, because you felt insecure, because you couldn't stand that Grandpa saw something good in me. Her silence was an admission. I picked up the DNA test. She lunged, not fast, not violently, but with this frantic, desperate motion that said everything about her. That she still thought she could control the narrative, that she still believed she could stop me. I stepped back. Touch me again, I said, and I'll call Carla and Bill right now. They're waiting for answers. She froze. I moved toward the door. You think I'm doing this to find out who I belong to, I said. But I'm doing this for something you never thought I'd have enough strength for. Her voice cracked. Revenge. I looked her dead in the eye. No, closure. The test results took a few weeks. By then, the entire family knew everything. About the letters, the photos, Grandma's affair, her obsession with control, her resentment toward my mom, her cruelty toward me. Carla was the one who confronted her hardest. Bill stopped answering her calls altogether. She was finally alone with the consequences she'd spent decades dodging. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like the family shame or the quiet disappointment. I felt free. When the results came back, I sat in my car with the envelope unopened for a good 10 minutes. I knew whatever was inside would change something. Either everything or nothing. But I also knew I could face it now. I opened it, and the answer was clear as day. I was Grandpa's daughter. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 25 years finally released. I cried. Not because I needed his DNA to feel connected to him, but because I finally had proof that the one person who treated me with quiet, unconditional love my whole childhood had loved me for a reason. A real one. A true one. That night I drove to the cemetery. I sat by his grave, read his last letter out loud, and told him I understood now. Everything. And then I went home. I didn't tell Grandma the results. I didn't need to. But I sent copies to Carla and Bill, along with scans of the letters. The family group chat went silent for 2 days straight. The next time Grandma called me, I blocked her number without listening to a single word. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't something she could scream over or twist or deny. My revenge was truth. And truth was the one thing she couldn't control. Now she lives with it, and I live without her.